Hello.
In the name of Allah, the most merciful and continuously beneficent, I, Dr. Kamran Ahmed Sumro, Head of SIG, Management and HR of SZABIST Research Center, welcome all of you in today's webinar on Women in Leadership, Moving the Needle Ahead. So we are organizing this session as a webinar from the platform of SZABIST Research Center. It's first time we are organizing this event from a newly established SZABIST Research Center. And the purpose of organizing this event is to appreciate the role of women in leadership and various sectors. And today we will have a panel discussion where we have different qualified speakers with us. They will share their experiences regarding the role of women in leadership, and also we will also discuss what are the crises, what are the barriers that women face during this whole phenomenon. Apart from that, we also have a brief talk on role of women in leadership by Mr. Kamal Alvi. He's Senior Project Manager, Amazon, based in Europe. So women have a very great role in every sphere of life, whether it is society, whether it's a community-based organizations, whether it's a corporate sector. But what we discuss today is basically about the greater role of women as leader. So we will discuss this different perspectives in the form of active participation of women as a leading role in corporate sector, and we have different perspectives that we are going to cover in today's session. And we will also encourage the comments and some sort of questions if we have from the audience, and we will try to get them answered from our worthy speakers and panelists. So today's panel discussion will be moderated by Dr. Sahar, Dr. Sahar Awan, and we have panelists with us, Ms. Nuzhat Shirin, Ms. Shirin Naqvi, and Dr. Hadia Majid. So let me share something about the SZABIST Research Center. We have initiated this particular activity from the platform of SZABIST Research Center, and the purpose of this center is to encourage research and research in practice. So this is an example of a panel discussion and talk series on different topics and issues which are concerned with management and leadership. So we will in the future also keep continuing such type of activities apart from formal research activities, seminars, workshops, and discussions. So because this is new normal of going online in the era of COVID-19, so we continue doing the both traditional and modern way of communication and research, that is the online medium. So we promise in the future we will also have such interactive sessions also on different themes and topics, and covering different perspectives of research in management and HR, and especially in leadership. And SZABIST Research Center, which is headed by Dr. Sara Walikazi. It has different SIGs, special interest groups. And this webinar is being organized by SIG, that is Management and HR. And we also have other SIGs, and they also have different programs in the pipeline. So we at SZABIST encourage research output, which has some contribution for the society also. So here today we are discussing about the gender parity in perspective of women in leadership, and we will learn different stories from our panelists, worthy speakers, how in Pakistani scenario, women have moved ahead the needle in the era of management and leadership. We will also come to know about the success stories and the challenges they face in everyday life, especially at workplace. So when we talk about workplace participation, it's not just the engagement of the women in workplace, but we are talking about the engagement of women in the leadership role. And what are the glass ceiling barriers that women face in different perspectives at workplace? We are also going to address problems and issues in today's webinar. Okay, so let's move to the panel discussion. And now I would like to request Dr. Sahar, Awan to please start the panel discussion. So
G. Am I audible now? Okay. G, I apologize for these delays. I think we can now proceed. I would like to start today by sharing some statistics from the World Economic Forum. So the Global Gender Gap Report, which is released by the World Economic Forum, ranks Pakistan at 151 out of 153 countries. The female labor force participation is rated at 25%. And if we further break that down, that figure, we can see that to look at women in leadership roles, then we can see that only less than 5% of the positions of legislators, senior officials, and managers are held by women. This is concerning. So now today with my panel of distinguished guests, I would like to discuss what are the realities which lead to such abysmal figures, and on a more aspirational note, what can we do in order to improve this situation? So I'd like to introduce my panel today. My first guest here is Dr. Hadia Majid. She is an economist by profession and an associate professor at LUMS. She's also the director of the Saudi Waheed Gender Initiative. Next, we have Ms. Shireen Naqvi. She is the founder of School of Leadership, which she's been running successfully for around 2 decades. And in addition to that, she is also a consultant with Carnelian. So she has a vast experience of consulting in the corporate sector. Lastly, we have Ms. Nuzhat Shirin. She is the respected chairperson of the Sindh Commission on the Status of Women. So welcome all of you to this panel. I am really excited to talk to you today. So each of you are a force, tremendous force in your own respected fields, and you're a role model to a number of young girls. So to start off, I'd like to go to Dr. Hadia Majid because we have a commonly held belief that economic growth will lead to prosperity and also greater gender parity. So Dr. Hadia, some of your research points to the contrary. Could you please discuss that?
Thank you, Sahar, and thank you very much for inviting me today. I'm very excited to be part of this, as you rightly point out, distinguished panel. And thank you for that question. So The thing with growth is that we have to consider what type of growth is taking place and which sectors growth is taking place. Now, I mean, first of all, we know that in Pakistan, there's certain sectors where we see a lot more women in terms of employment, and there's certain sectors where we see very little women. So, construction is one of the sectors where we see very little women. Transport is a sector where we see very few women. Agriculture, in contrast, is predominantly filled with female labor force participants. So if you're seeing growth in construction and seeing growth in transport, if you're seeing greater employment in these sectors, then you're not going to see women's employment really jump that much. So one is the type of growth that's taking place. And secondly, even if growth is taking place, let's say if growth is taking place in agriculture, there's no guarantee that the dividends of of that growth will come to women. So we have to consider the nature of the growth that's even taking place in those sectors where women are employed. So, to give you an example, the kind of employment that women have in agriculture, a lot of it is actually unpaid family work. So, they're working on farms and they're unpaid for that work. So, आप agriculture में जितनी भी growth कर लें, जितनी मर्जी growth कर लें, अगर let's say commercial farming आपकी increase हो रही है, आपको जो peasant worker है, जो खवातीन हैं, उनके standard of living पे, उनकी employment पे उस किस्म की growth होती हुई नजर नहीं आएगी. Finally, what I want to point out is it is a concept in economics that we talk about in terms of elasticity. So when you look at women's employment and how elastic it is relative to growth, so how quickly it responds to growth, that's when you really start seeing how precarious women's position in the Pakistani economy is. I think the counterfactual is a lot more revealing than to actually think about growth. So when you see periods of recession, it is the female worker that is the first to be laid off. And one of the reasons why the female worker is the first to be laid off is because you are looking at thinking of women in the Pakistani workplace as secondary workers. Now, I've talked about growth in the context of employment and whether or not the dividends of growth are coming to women. But then, as you rightly pointed out, women are actually not that majorly employed, at least in the formal sector in Pakistan. A lot of times you're seeing women in the informal sector when it comes to employment. और उसका ग्रोथ के साथ क्या रिलेशन है पाकिस्तान में वो हमें ज्यादा उसके बारे में नहीं पता है क्योंकि we just don't have that kind of data on the informal sector. And then I know later on we're going to be talking about why women are not a part of the labor force, and there perhaps I can talk a little bit more about growth and its relationship with just the ordinary man, even outside of the employment landscape.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Dr. Hadia. So what I'm hearing is, in order to have more women in more leadership roles, we need to have more women in the formal organized sector, in the organized labor force. So, okay, so this brings us to the fact that, Ms. Shireen, I would direct this at you, because we've seen enrollment of females in higher education institutions, at least in the larger cities of Pakistan, that females do make up a significant amount of the student body. However, we do not see this being translated into corporate leadership. Since you work extensively at your School of Leadership and as a corporate trainer, so what do you think is behind this? Is it the mindset of traditional gender roles, or I mean, what would you attribute this to?
Obviously, Dr. Sahar, it is entirely cultural in my point of view. Working with young ladies, young girls across communities from the interior to urban areas to towns, everywhere, it boils down to cultural elements. Whether आप कहीं लिखे पढ़े लोग हैं, वो भी एक मैं कहती हूँ उसको SMS follow करते हैं. SMS means status, money and security. Those are the only values that we follow in our society. कि हमारी वैल्यू कब बनती है जब हमारे पास पैसा हो, एक स्टेटस हो और सिक्योरिटी हो. So we are not looking at कि लड़की को हाँ पढ़ा दिया, that is all right, that is also part of the status, especially urban areas. Families consider themselves कि हाई स्टेटस की अगर लड़की पढ़ी भी हो, लेकिन ज्यादा भी ना पढ़ी भी हो, because वो थोड़ा सा डोरमैट इफेक्ट उसमें होना चाहिए. She has to succumb to the male. लेकिन उनकी men's mentality has not changed. आप अभी multinational corporate में चले जाएं, उधर भी the interview that is asked of the girls, the questions that are asked are, ये बताएं कि आप married हैं, आप अच्छा नहीं है तो कब प्लान है आपका शादी होने का? जो शादीशुदा है, अच्छा बच्चे हैं? अच्छा नहीं है तो कब हो रहा है अच्छे बच्चे? These are questions that are internationally thought of as harassment. ये harassment है. You cannot ask those kind of questions. Sorry. But यहाँ we determine our livelihoods and careers based on these because they are a fact. फिर होता है कि जी औरतें लेट सिटिंग नहीं कर सकती, फैक्ट्री में कैसे जाएंगी? सेल्स की औरतें फील्ड्स में कैसे जाएंगी? खेतों में कैसे जाएंगी? हमारी बड़ी बड़ी पावर कंपनीज में इंजीनियर्स आ गई है, खवातीन इंजीनियर्स कमिंग आउट ऑफ एनईडी एंड कमिंग आउट ऑफ एजुकेशनल इंस्टीट्यूशंस। वो लड़कियां कहती हैं हमें खंबे चढ़ने दो, हमने खंबों पे चढ़ के बिजली की तारें जोड़नी है। लेकिन उनके सीनियर्स जो कहते हैं हाय तुम तो हमारी बेटियों की तरह हो, हम तुम्हें खंबे कैसे चढ़ने दें, तुम जाके ऐसा करो खंबे की तस्वीर खींच के आ जाओ। So the mindset is what we need to work on. It's not about the girl not wanting to do it. She's ready, she's armed, she's equipped, and she's out there. She wants to take the plunge. But the society is too strong and won't let her.
Okay, okay, thank you. Okay, so next I'd like to go to Ms. Nuzhat Shirin. So you are from the public sector, so away from the corporate sector, the academic sector. So what would you, I mean, so with your vast experience of being in and interacting with the public sector, so what do you think are the main barriers for women's participation in the public sector? And by that I mean the bureaucracy and regulatory bodies, because we have some representation in legislative bodies, but not in the bureaucracy and the mainstream government sector. So what would you think are the main barriers there?
देखिए 15
I'm very sorry, Ms. Nuzhat. I think there's some technology issues at your end. Maybe we'll come back to you in a few minutes. In the meantime, then I'd like to go back to Ms. Shireen Naqvi. So, Ms. Shirin, if you could tell us because you're an entrepreneur, you are a female entrepreneur, and I think we have like 6% of businesses are owned only by women, or majority women owned here. So you are one of the rare few. So what are the challenges that you face, not only as an entrepreneur, but as a female entrepreneur? Could you share that with us?
Certainly, Dr. Sahar. First of all, I'm not a female entrepreneur, I'm a woman entrepreneur. Let's get that right. Let's get away from the sex part to the gender parts. All right, we've got to relearn these things. I'm trying to teach everybody. We are not a frog or a mouse in a laboratory or a patient sick in a hospital. Be a female and male are looking at the genitals, all right? We are a woman or a girl. So yeah, I started 9 businesses, and out of which I have now left with 3. 6 were shut down because I couldn't carry them on, but I'm very happy to have opened them. My tremendous experience that came out of them. And every time I'm asked this question, what were the challenges you were faced as a woman entrepreneur? I'm sorry, I don't even understand that question, Dr. Sahar. I don't know why is it assumed that if you're a woman, you have faced challenges. I haven't. I'm sorry to disappoint you on this question. I've not faced any challenges. People take you more seriously as a woman who is out there trying to work for a cause, something that is a worthy and a passionate movement that you're trying to go. People come and join you very, very quickly. It's an advantage to be a woman, a lady, to bring out a thought, an ideology. It's just that women are not being able to present. Only yesterday I had a meeting, a conference with many women entrepreneurs, And we were trying to inculcate into them that you're not selling soap or samosas or biryani. No, you're selling a service behind it. Please move your mindset from the object to the cause. And once you come out with the cause, the money is all lying there. The money has got oceans of money are lying there, mountains of money are lying in the world. But you're not articulating it to be able to sink into the hearts and minds of people. So I've had no issues, I'm sorry, as a woman. I'm sure men have had more than me.
No, that's very encouraging. If you do say that, that's encouraging for other female women entrepreneurs or
Thank
aspiring
you.
entrepreneurs. If that is the way you feel, that is a more positive thing actually. So, Ms. Nuzhat, do we have you back on board?
They're just changing her laptop and her system so that we can have her. She's just moving around.
Okay.
I think they're just
So,
taking her equipment.
okay. So, Dr. Hadia, then I'll go next to you. So, what kind of changes, are there any changes that you would suggest at the policy level in order to have more women representation in the formal sector? Because as an economist, is there anything that we need to do at the policy level to address this issue?
Sure, Dr. Sahar. So I think that we're moving in the right direction. So there's been a lot of policy-based interventions. There's also been a lot of labor laws that have been passed. Been a lot of recognition of women's role in society. So we've had legislation passed which recognizes the peasant worker, the female peasant worker, the woman peasant worker. Ms. Shirin, I have your points in mind over here, and I truly appreciate them. So the woman peasant worker in Sindh has been recognized as an actual agriculture worker. Women can now be bona fide representatives in water association. These are positive steps forward. We have extended our maternity benefits to 6 months at the federal level. That's also fantastic. At the same time, we're also seeing a greater recognition of the man's role in reproductive work. So paternity leave is something that we're hearing a lot more about. And I think that this is all because of the phenomenal activist work that is taking place in the public arena in Pakistan. We are recognizing home-based workers, women home-based workers, women domestic workers. So even in the informal sector, there's a great deal of activity going on to get women their rights. So I feel like in terms of policy, we are moving in the right direction. But I think your title is very apt. It's a needle moving. So I feel like it's not moving fast enough, and we're not thinking through the intricacies enough. So the extension of the maternity benefits, that's been fantastic. But like Ms. Shiri said, what are we doing in terms of harassment at work? There's a law that's been passed focused on harassment, but it's defined harassment in a much more narrow fashion. So it doesn't cover informal work, it doesn't cover working from within the home. And we know the majority of our women are actually employed in the informal sector. We know that the majority of our women, even within the formal sector, work from within the home. So these are the intricacies that we need to think through. We need to consider how do we make it easier for women to balance their reproductive and productive roles, because we know they are both of significant importance both to women and to the wider economy. And we need to think about, and we need to move forward, I think, from just thinking about provision of daycares, which a lot of our commissions and a lot of our legislation is focused on, I feel is not enough. We need to be thinking about making the workplace a lot more conducive to women stepping out of the home and really being a part of the workforce.
Okay. Ms. Nuzhat, welcome back. I'm really sorry to have lost you. We'd like to come back to you. Coming back to the public sector.
मैं बहुत अच्छी अच्छी बातें सुन के खुश भी हो रही हूँ खातन और लड़कियां, और फिर जो सैलरी पैकेज है उसको बेहतर बनाया जाए। ये 3-4 इशू है। फिर हम देखते हैं कि अगर करियर को यूनिवर्सिटियों में जरूर होना चाहिए करियर काउंसलिंग का शोबा, कि जो पास आउट होने वाली लड़कियां हैं वो किस तरह आगे बढ़े मुख्तलिफ शोबों में, उनको नो हाउ होना चाहिए। देखिए, मेरे जमाने तक तो पॉलिटिकल प्रोसेस बहुत ही स्ट्रांग था, इसलिए हम सियासी सोच के साथ हमें इदारों के बारे में मालूमात होती थी, हमें अपने राइट का पता होता था। लेकिन आज क्योंकि हम इतने गैप्स हमारे दरमियान आते रहे, ना कोरोना के दौरान, तो हमने कमीशन ने आवाज उठाई कि इसके लिए कोई स्पेशल पैकेज दिया जाता उन औरतों के लिए जो प्राइवेट स्कूलों में टीचर थी, जो रेस्टोरेंट में काम करने लगी थी, जो मॉल्स में काम कर रही थी, जो पार्लर में काम कर रही थी। तो अब कमीशन ने इस तरफ हुकूमत की तवज्जो मबजूल कराई है, और हम मुस्तकिल बुनियादों पे, जैसे हमने अभी पॉलिसी बना के दी है, जेंडर पॉलिसी, जो कोविड या इमरजेंसीज के अंदर इस्तेमाल
Okay, thank you, Ji. Thank you, Mr. So next, I'd like to ask again, Ms. Shirin Naqvi, I'll come back to you. So I'd like to ask you, so, well, actually, I'd like to ask each of you one by one, starting with Ms. Shirin Naqvi. So what do you think can we do at the individual level, in the household setting, in our educational institutions, in our professional life, in order to make sure that women come up? I mean, not just that they start, they join the labor force, but that they are able to go on to the top.
Thank you for that question, Dr. Sahar. I heard Dr. Nuzhat saying کہ میں سندھ کی عورتوں کی آواز ہوں بالکل and وہ آواز بہت ہی زبردست ہے. میں ڈاکٹر نزہت امیزنگ. میں بھی بتا دوں میں پشاور میں پیدا ہوئی تھی اس وقت جب پشاور میں ہم ٹانگوں میں پھرتے تھے. گاؤں کا ہی ماحول تھا. ہم پیدل جاتے تھے یا سائیکل پہ جاتے تھے. گاڑیاں تو دور کی بات ہوتی تھی. تو میں گھر میں اپنی تیسری لڑکی پیدا ہوئی تھی. جب میں پیدا ہوئی تھی تو پورا خاندان رو رہا تھا کہ تیسری لڑکی پیدا ہو گئی. اس وقت ہمارے یہ اکنامکس کے حالات تھے کہ مجھے کبھی اپنا فراک نہیں پہنا, مجھے کسی اور کا فراک مل جاتا تھا تو میں پہن لیتی تھی. ٹھیک ہے, تو ہم لیکن جو اس گھونسلے میں, جو آپ کا سوال کا جواب ہے, جس گھونسلے میں ہم رہتے تھے یعنی اپنے گھر میں, ہمیں دو چیزیں شدید, بلکہ تین چیزیں اپنے ماں باپ سے اور اپنے ارد گرد سے شدید ملی تھی, انٹینس. وہ تھا ایک پیار. آج کل پیار حرام قرار دیا گیا ہے, بلکہ کہتے ہیں کہ آپ روڈ پہ ذرا ہاتھ پکڑ کے نکلے نا اپنے میاں کے ساتھ, ہاتھ میں ہاتھ ڈال کے نکلے تو آپ کو تھانے میں ڈال دیا جائے گا, لیکن جو کلیشنکوف لے کے نکلتا ہے اس کو کچھ نہیں کہا جاتا. ٹھیک ہے. اچھا, نمبر 2 ڈسپلن, وقت کی پابندی. جیسے آپ نے سیمینار, آج ٹھیک ہے 10 منٹ ادھر 5 منٹ ادھر, کوئی گالی کوئی نہیں, نہیں نہیں نہیں, یہ اجازت نہیں ہے. آپ بند کریں اس کو, کل دوبارہ بلائیں, لیکن 3 بجے اگر کہا تو 3 بجے کا ہو. یہ کہاں گیا سارا؟ ہم ایکڈیمک انسٹیٹیوشن میں بیٹھے ہیں اور وہاں یہ حال ہے. تیسری چیز ٹرسٹ. اپنی بچوں کو ٹرسٹ کریں, ان پہ بھروسہ کریں. خدارا وہ چھوٹے سے بچہ وہ ہلتا ہے گلاس پانی کو اٹھانے کے لیے تو پیچھے سے آواز آتی ہے ٹوٹ جائے گا, یعنی اس کا مستقبل پہلے ہی بتا دیا جاتا ہے. ابھی وہ ہلا نہیں ہے, ذرا سا گر جائے گا, چوٹ لگ جائے گی, گندے ہو جاؤ گے, یہ ہمارا مستقبل بتا دیا جاتا ہے. پھر ہم حیران ہوتے ہیں کہ ہائے اللہ, کچھ ہوتا ہی نہیں پاکستان میں. کیوں ہوگا؟ جب اس کی جو انیشل اسکرپٹ, جو 3 سال کی ہارڈ وائرنگ اس کی ہو گئی ہے, جو ایڈلٹ لائف میں وہ لے کے آتا ہے, ہارڈ وائرنگ یہی ہے, میں ہلوں گا تو وہ ہو جائے گا. تو اب جو IMF کہتا ہے, جو ورلڈ بینک کہتا ہے, وہی کرے گا نا. اپنے طرف سے جا کے کھڈے تھوڑی روڈ میں بند کرے گا. نہ نہ نہ, حکومت آئے گی تو کیونکہ اس کو کوئی کھلاتا رہا ہے. تو پلیز اپنے گھونسلے کو صحیح کریں. ماں باپ اپنے کو ٹرسٹ نہیں کر رہے تو بچوں کو کیسے ٹرسٹ کریں گے؟ اور یہ آئے گا کہاں سے؟ صرف ایک طریقہ ہے اس کا, جو کال ہے اور فیل ہے اس کو ایک کریں. یہ مت بولیں کہ صفائی نفس ایمان ہے اور اسی کے بینر کے نیچے کوڑے کا ڈھیر پڑا ہے. یہ کال ہے اور یہ فیل ہے. اس لیے میرے ہرے پاسپورٹ پہ اتنے ویزے لگنے پڑتے ہیں کیونکہ دنیا مجھے ٹرسٹ نہیں کرتی. میرا کہنا تو بڑا اچھا ہے, لپے آتی ہے دعا بن کے. کراچی میں ابھی میں جہاں بیٹھی ہوں اس کے پاس 3 تلوار کا راؤنڈ اباؤٹ ہے. ان 3 تلواروں پہ لکھا ہے یونٹی, فیتھ, ڈسپلن, اور ارد گرد جو ٹریفک گھوم رہی ہے اس میں کہیں یہ 3 لفظ نہیں نظر آتے. تو یہ کال اور یہ فیل, پہلے یہ تو ٹھیک کر کے دیکھیں. اپنے گھروں سے شروع کریں, اپنی ذات سے شروع کریں. تھینک یو.
Very nicely said, Ms. Shirin Naqvi. Dr. Hadia, would you like to add anything to that?
I think Miss Shini has said this so eloquently. I don't want to add anything, and in so doing detract from what she said. I mean, she's absolutely right. So if you want to think about leadership, we have to consider what is happening within the household. کیونکہ جو آپ کے گھر کے اندر خواتین کا اسٹیٹس ہے, جس طرح سے گھر میں خواتین کو ٹریٹ کیا جاتا ہے, ان کی کیا بارگننگ پوزیشن ہے, that's both a reflection of what women's status in society, and then it goes on to be reflected within society. So it becomes a cycle کہ جو معاشرے میں ہو رہا ہے وہی گھر کے اندر ہو رہا ہے, اور جو گھر کے اندر ہو رہا ہے وہی معاشرے کے اندر ہو رہا ہے. So what I mean from an economics perspective, one thing that we talk about is that when you give women access and more importantly control over economic resources, it immediately improves their position within the household. And by economic resources I mean income, I mean assets. لیکن اس میں ہم most of the time when we're thinking about policy, when we're thinking about intervention, we're thinking about اچھا access کسی طرح سے دلا دیں. So ان کا بینک اکاؤنٹ کھلوا دیں, ان کو فارمل سیکٹر میں لے آئیں, ان کو کسی طرح سے ارن انکم پہنچا دیں, ان کو cash transfer پہنچا دیں, which is what a lot of unconditional cash transfers, even conditional cash transfers are doing. But I feel like we haven't really thought through the control aspect as much. We know that a woman may have access to an economic resource but may not have control over that resource, and until she doesn't have control, it's not going to have an impact on her status. Now जिस तरह से आपके घर में bargaining position है, जिस तरह से घर में status है, वही फिर बाहर reflect हो रहा है. If the woman doesn't have a high status within the household, she's not going to be able to bargain for and see a high status within the workplace or within society as a whole. So I'll just echo what Ms. Shirin is saying. And if we really want to move women to the top, we have to think about how they're being treated within the household, because that has cascading effects on the kind of human capital women can get, the kind of training they can get, the kind of education they can get, the kind of health they can get. And that, of course, is something that agar aapke paas human capital nahi hoga, to aap उसका reward किस तरह से पाएंगी in the formal employment sector.
Okay, very nicely said. So, okay, so you're saying that in addition to all of that, in addition to giving women resources, we need to also give them control over how to spend it. They have to have control over the economic resources. Okay, thank you, Dr. Ms. Nuzhat. Your views on that?
मैं कुछ कहना चाहती हूँ ये कि देखें जो शीरी ने बात कही वो बहुत ही अहमियत रखती है, और जब हम कहते हैं कि हम अपने रिसोर्सेज देख के और हम अपने आप को कमिटमेंट को क्यों नहीं देख रहे, मेरे पास अभी इस अरसे में बड़ा मुझे गुड एक्सपीरियंस हुआ. मैं हमेशा कहती हूँ कि हम पॉजिटिव चीजें भी बताया करें जब हम बात करते हैं. जो हमारा मुल्क हमारे जैसे मुल्कों को 160 पे ले जाया जाता है तो उसमें कुछ हमारा खुद का भी दोष है कि हम अपनी अच्छी बातें जो हमारे सूबे में हमारे मुल्क में औरतों के लिए की गई या औरतें आगे बढ़ी, बच्चियां आगे बढ़ी, उसका जिक्र नहीं करते. आपको पता है कि हमारे इदारे में अभी नया बच्चा बना हुआ इदारा है, लेकिन ये सिर्फ कमिटमेंट है जो इतना सारा हमने काम किया है. वो यंग गर्ल जो मुझसे जुड़ी हैं और उनका मैं कमिटमेंट लेवल देख रही हूँ, वो मुख्तलिफ शहरों और डिस्ट्रिक्ट से आई हुई उससे जुड़ी हैं. कोई मीरपुर खास की है तो कोई सांगड़ की है और कोई कराची की है. मैंने नहीं देखा कि उनमें जर्रा बराबर कमी हो उनके जज्बे में, और वो जिस तरह काम कर रही है, और बहुत कम डेली वेजेस है उनकी तनख्वाह भी. अभी वो कोई कॉन्ट्रैक्ट पे भी नहीं है, अभी वो कोई पक्की सरकारी नौकरी पे भी नहीं है. वो बाहर से पढ़ के आई हुई लड़कियां हैं, वो खुद से आके मुझसे जुड़ी हैं और वो कह रही हैं हाँ हम अपने सिंध की औरत के लिए काम करना चाहते हैं. रह गई वहां की बात के एक गांव देहात का माहौल और अब जो तब्दीली आई है, हमारा कहना यह है, और अभी हम कोशिश भी यही कर रहे हैं कि जो बजटरी एलोकेशंस हैं वुमेन रिलेटेड डिपार्टमेंट की, उनमें कैंपेन अवेयरनेस कैंपेन के लिए एक हेड बढ़ाया जाए और उसमें पैसे डाले जाए. हमने अपने इदारे को घर के एक कम आमदनी वाला घर होता है ना, उसकी तरह हमने अपने इदारे को चलाया है. अभी अब 3 साल से हम चला रहे हैं और अब 4थे साल में दाखिल हुए हैं. और जो कोई हमारी मदद को कहता है तो हम उससे काम कहते हैं, हम उससे पैसे नहीं कहते कि पैसे दे दो, या हम ये जोर नहीं डाल रहे कि बैंक अकाउंट. हम कह रहे नहीं, आप ये वाला काम कर दें, आप इस इदारे के साथ मिल लें, आप इस गांव में जाके पुलिस स्टेशन को सही कर दें, आप इस स्कूल को सही कर दें. क्योंकि जब मैं नवाबशाह के गांव में जाती हूँ और वहां लड़कियों से पूछती हूँ कि कितनी पढ़ी लिखी लड़कियां हैं, तो उनमें जो 50 औरतें थीं और जवान लड़कियां और औरतें मिला के, तो वो लड़कियों ने हाथ उठाया. मैंने पूछा कितनी लड़कियां पढ़ी लिखी हैं और क्या पढ़ी लिखी हैं, तो 25 ने हाथ उठाया कि हम प्राइमरी स्कूल पढ़े हुए हैं, 15 ने हाथ उठाया कि हम इंटर पास हैं, और 3 ने हाथ उठाया कि हम बीए बैचलर किया हुआ है. फिर उनसे जब पूछा कि तुमने ये किस तरह से किया और सब लोगों ने क्यों नहीं किया, तो उन्होंने कहा देखें हमें शौक बहुत है पढ़ने लिखने का. अब जो 2 बीए पास थी उनके उस ग्रुप में, उन्होंने कहा कि हम इनसे इंस्पायर हुए और इन्होंने हमें बताया, क्योंकि हमारे गांव में तो 5वीं तक स्कूल है, ہم 5ویں کے بعد کیا پڑھتے. تو انہوں نے بتایا کہ کس طرح ہم اپنا انرولمنٹ کرائیں شہر کے اسکول میں جا کے, اور وہ ہمیں لے کے گئیں, اور پھر وہاں سے انہوں نے اسکولنگ کی پرائیویٹ, اور پھر انہوں نے انٹر پاس کیا. اب ان کا کہنا تھا کہ دیکھیں ہم کالج جاتے ہیں کیونکہ ہمیں بڑا شوق ہے کالج میں پڑھنے کا, لیکن ٹرانسپورٹ. تو اب جو ہمارے پاس ڈونر اگر آتا ہے تو ہم کیا کہہ رہے ہیں, ہم کہہ رہے ہیں بھائی پہلے شروعات اس طرح کرو کہ 4 گاؤں کے لیے تم گرلز کی ٹرانسپورٹیشن کا کر دو انتظام, تاکہ وہ جو لڑکیاں پڑھنا چاہ رہی ہیں شہر جا کے گاؤں میں, تو یہ حکومت کی مدد ہو جائے گی نا. ہمارے اوپر اتنے قرضے عائد ہو گئے ہیں اور ہمارا فیڈرل کے ریسورسز نہیں آتے فائنینشیل, تو پھر ہم یہ کہیں گے نا کہ جو ہماری مدد کرنا چاہ رہا ہے تو ہم نے اپنی پرائیورٹی سیٹ کی ہیں کہ اچھا آپ جو ہیں آپ یہ کر دیں کہ ان 4 گاؤں میں انیشیلی آپ بچیوں کے لیے کالج جانے تک کے لیے ٹرانسپورٹ کا انتظام کر دیں. اسی طرح ہم نے ایک ادارے کو کہا ہے کہ آپ ہمیں سندھی اور اردو میں اپنا جو آپ مٹیریل بناتی ہیں عورتوں کے ہیلتھ اور ہائیجین کے حوالے سے, وہ آپ ہمیں دے دیں. ہم ان گاؤں جہاں ہمیں سوال آ رہا ہے کہ ہمیں معلومات دی جائے, ہم ان تک وہ پہنچا دیں گے. تو اس طرح کم وسائل میں جن لوگوں نے جو کام کیا ہوا ہے وہ ہم کو بھیجیں گے, ہم اس کو استعمال کریں گے جہاں ضرورت ہے بہت اور جس کی ڈیمانڈ ہو رہی ہے. تو اس طرح جیسے گھر, پھر لوگ کہتے ہیں نا کہ عورتیں نہیں کرتی, ادارہ نہیں بناتی. بھائی عورتیں ہی ادارہ بنا رہی ہیں, یہ شیریں نقوی ہو, تم ہو, سارا ہو. ہم ایک مڈل کلاس سے نکل کے آئے ہیں, اوپر پہنچے ہیں. ہم نے وہ حالات دیکھے, ہمارا ایک خاندانی منظر تھا جہاں ہمارے ماں باپ کے پاس وقت تھا, دادیوں کے پاس وقت تھا, وہ ہمیں ٹریننگ دی ہوئی تھی, اور پھر ہم پولیٹیکل پروسیس کا حصہ بنے. تو آج جب ہم ادارے کے ہیڈ بنے تو ہمارے پاس وہ ساری چیزیں ہیں. ہم آج کی ماڈرن چیزوں کو بھی اڈاپٹ کر رہے ہیں, اور ساتھ میں جو ہماری پچھلی جو ایکسرسائز رہی ہمارے ساتھ, تو وہ ہم یہاں پہ امپلیمنٹ کر رہے ہیں, جس کی وجہ سے سندھ کمیشن آن اسٹیٹس آف وومن آپ کو الگ نظر آئے گا. ہم گاؤں میں بھی جاتے ہیں, ہم شہر میں بھی جاتے ہیں, ہم عورتوں کی تفریق کو منع کر رہے ہیں. ہم کہہ رہے ہیں یہ کوئی نہ کہے کہ یہ سندھی ہے, یہ اردو ہے, یا پنجابی ہے, یا امیر ہے یا غریب ہے, یہ گاؤں کی ہے, یہ دیہات کی ہے. بھائی عورتیں عورتیں, لڑکیاں لڑکیاں, اور ہمارے یہاں جو مسائل ہیں سب کو کم و بیش ایک ہیں. تو ہم پہلے صحت کے مسائل دیکھیں گے, ہم ان کی تعلیم کے مسائل دیکھیں گے. جب صحت اور تعلیم کے مسائل اچھے ہوں گے تو ان کو خود بخود ملازمتیں ملیں گی, ان کی آمدنی میں اضافہ ہونے کا. جیسے اگر وہ پیس ریٹ ورکر بھی ہیں, ان کو بزنس کی ٹریننگ دی جائے گی. تو پھر میں نے بہت سارے ڈونروں کو کہا, انہوں نے کہا جی بی وی پہ کام کریں. میں نے کہا جی یہ جی بی وی پہ ہی کام ہے. جب بچیوں کو تعلیم صحیح دی جائے گی, ان کے اداروں کو مستحکم کیا جائے گا, مضبوط بنایا جائے گا, ہمارے ڈویژنل لیول پہ اچھے سسٹم بن جائیں گے ایجوکیشن کے, اور ہیلتھ کی فیسلٹیز ہوگی. ڈاکٹر عذرا فضل کتنا کام اچھا کر رہی ہیں, تو ہم کیا یہ کہیں گے کہ نہیں عورت نہیں ہے, وہ نہیں, وہ ایسے امیر ہیں غریب ہیں؟ نہیں, ہم کہیں گے کہ ہاں ایک خاتون ہو کے بھی انہوں نے جو رول پلے کیا ہے کووڈ میں, وہ کیا ہم دوسروں کو جا کے دیکھیں, یا سندھ کے اداروں کو اٹھا لیں جو کم وسائل میں رہتے ہوئے بھی کام کر رہے ہیں. تو ہم یہی کہیں گے کہ ہاں تھوڑا ٹائم دیں, ہم اسٹریٹجی بہت پازیٹیو طریقے سے بنائیں, اور اگر ہماری بات سنی گئی, جو کہ سنی جا رہی ہے اب ہماری بات, جو ہم ریکمنڈیشن کیونکہ حقائق پر مبنی دے رہے, ہم ہر وقت لان تان نہیں کر رہے, یہ بری زبان استعمال کرنا. میں نے ابھی شیریں صاحبہ کہہ رہی تھی کہ آپ بتائیں کیا مسئلہ ہے. میں نے کہا میں تو اب سکھا رہی ہوں لڑکیوں کو ہاؤ ٹو ڈیل ود مین. آپ کو اگر مردوں سے ڈیلنگ آ جائے, آپ کے اندر اپنی ڈگنیٹی کو رکھنے کا سلیقہ آ جائے, ہماری عورتیں سب سے آگے نظر آئیں گی, ہماری بچیاں آگے بڑھیں گی.
Okay. So what I'm hearing is that, well, one, we need access to education. We need to have women who are able to have the necessary transport. But other than that, from Ms. Shireen and Dr. Hadia, so I'm hearing is we need to change the narrative within the household. We need to also project other women leaders. We need to have more role models for women to look up to. And that is one way we'll have more women who can aspire to be like them. And I think that's, G, can you hear me? I think we can conclude this panel. Thank you so much, Ms. Naqvi, Dr. Hadia, Ms. Nuzhat. It was my pleasure talking with you today. Unfortunately, our talk was plagued by a lot of internet glitches. I apologize for that, and I wish I had more time to talk to you. But thank you so much for joining us. It was absolute pleasure talking.
Shukriya. Khuda Hafiz.
Thank you very much. Khuda Hafiz.
Next. Gee, that was a very interesting conversation with three of our panelists. Next up, we have Mr. Kamal Alvi, who's going to be joining us from Germany. Kamal is working as a senior project manager at Amazon. And one of the responsibilities that Mr. Kamal Alvi is looking at is he's leading some of the initiatives for diversity and inclusion at Amazon. So Amazon is in the logistics business. It's more tilted towards one gender. It's one of the more traditionally male-dominated sectors. So Kamal is looking at diversity and inclusion measures at Amazon. Diversity is also very important. We are going to be today focusing more on gender inclusion. So welcome, Kamal.
Hi, good afternoon, Sahar. Thank you for the introduction. You're absolutely right. I was just listening into the panel discussion before, and it was just so astounding. Shireen, Nuzhat, and Hadia, they just gave such insightful comments, and I feel like the odd person out, being the only male talking about those particular aspects. I'll keep some of that information short and crisp, right? So, working with Amazon, and these are generally my personal opinions as well. I'm not here to represent Amazon's opinion, but I just wanted to share certain feedback about how this is being processed globally as well, right? So looking at the overall numbers, and Amazon shares this publicly as well, that currently out of the more than 1 million people working for Amazon, there's around 44.6% women and 55.4% men. So that is the global gender distribution of the workforce. But if you look at the management level there, and that one breaks down, the scenario is a bit worse. So there's 70.7% men and 29.3% women. So even in advanced societies where there's a lot more gender parity in play, there are companies who are focusing their efforts in order to increase the gender equality ratio in companies. Because and it's not just about good publicity, or it's a nice to have as well. There are economic reasons behind it. Right? There's a 2015 McKinsey report on around 366 companies where they talked about if there was diversity in management, they were 35% more likely to have higher financial returns than the industry mean. And those in the top quartile for diversity were having 15% more likely returns above the industry. And similarly, Credit Suisse did a survey in 2016 for around 2,400 companies. And the result of that was that there was at least one female board member on the board. Those companies had a higher return on equity and a higher net income growth. So when you're looking at it from a corporate perspective, you have to keep those baseline numbers in mind as well. So it's not just moving the needle forward on a society basis, but it makes financial sense as well. It broadens the workforce that you have access to, and diverse teams just work better. Like there's multiple surveys and studies that have been done on this particular aspect, that when you have different voices available on the table, the teams come to better decisions and they move faster and they're more accommodating and empathetic to other people's experiences. And you're absolutely right. At the top of the introduction, you mentioned that in this discussion, we're focusing largely on women empowerment. There's a great point by Ms. Shirin that not females, we're talking about women in the workplace, right? That's a really great comment. But generally, when we're talking about diversity and inclusion, we're also talking about racial diversity and people with disabilities, right? Like, so there's an exclusionary nature that's involved in a lot of those aspects. But I feel all of these topics go hand in hand. No community or no subsegment should be left behind, and everybody needs to be a part of that process. Just what a couple of the industry factors.
Okay, thank you, Kamal. Yes, definitely, I would agree with you. So we do have now a substantial amount of research from leading institutions which basically say that leadership is not the domain of any one gender, and that yes, there are different leadership styles which are favored by women versus men, but the effective leadership is not linked with any one gender. It's not women or men. So within the ranks of Amazon, so I mean, at your workplace, so we just want to have some sort of Amazon. What kind of measures do you guys have in order to promote women in the higher ranks? So as you also said that you guys have 46% women in the workforce at Amazon, but if you look at the higher management, that translates is diluted down to almost 30%. So so do you guys do actively, or do you have any measures to promote women and in leadership positions?
Absolutely. So there's a couple of different initiatives that are ongoing within the company as well. I'm actually championing one or two of those in order to move the needle forward. But it works. The approach has to be multifaceted, right? Like, so we've got to what the items that we try to focus on is like engage, develop, recruit, and build, right? Not only do we want to be an attractive workplace for females joining our organization, especially because looking at it from a global engineering services perspective. So I'm part of the global engineering services perspective, and a lot of our work is launching new facilities, and that means it's traditionally an industry where we really haven't had that many females joining in, right? Like construction management, logistics, like on the pre-construction related aspects as well. So it's a multifaceted approach. First of all, like, we need to reach out to the universities to actually try to engage more female recruits coming out of universities. You try to get them more interested in these traditionally male-dominated fields. So it starts from a little bit from the university as well, and once they get into the organization, there is a widespread mentoring program as well. There are around 12 different affinity groups within the organization. So there are multiple initiatives that are put in place in order to give colleagues joining the organization to gather around the common cultures and common understanding. And there's women in procurement, women in engineering, there are military members as well. There are multiple affinity groups, and there are ongoing efforts, very top-driven as well, in order to continue to increase this percentage, like you called out, sir. Like, especially, there's no concrete targets that have been laid out that we need to get to a certain point, but it is work in motion, and there are improvements that we monitor from year to year. So, maybe next year when we'll touch base again, we'll have a higher percentage of female managers in the organization.
Okay. So I'm hearing you that so you guys have, so at Amazon you are actively promoting women in leadership positions, and you say that you have initiatives like mentoring programs, right? So I think that kind of ties in with what our previous panel was saying, that we need more role models, we need more mentors, and so you're saying that there are traditionally fields where women are less likely to go into like STEM and like logistics and these certain areas. So I think this also ties back again to what Ms. Shireen Naqvi was saying, that we need to change this conversation within the households. We need, that is where it starts, that, you know, all fields are open for everyone. And I think that would increase the number of women which pursue these as a career, which pursue these for their higher education. So that's very interesting. So thank you very much, Kamal. It was a pleasure having you here, and it was very interesting to hear that companies are actively promoting the role of women within their higher ranks, and we will hopefully touch base with you next year and see whether these have led to positive changes within Amazon.
Absolutely. I mean, Amazon is a very metric-driven company as well, so everything needs to be measured accordingly. So I'm sure that we'll be able to look back and reflect on some interesting numbers. I consider that a major success from our side as well. Thank you for having me on the talk, sir. Really appreciate it, and thank you for putting together such a fantastic panel.
Not at all. Thank you so much for joining. It was a pleasure to have you here. Hopefully, we'll see you again sometime. Thank you again for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Welcome. So, as we've heard our panelists for today, so I think it was pretty interesting talk with a lot of takeaways. That firstly, all of us, we need to change the dialogue within our households. It is only then that we know that, that the way that we groom our girls and our boys is going to have repercussions on how they enter the workforce, or whether or not they enter the workforce, and how they basically rise up the ranks. So with that, I mean, I think we have the example of some leading companies like Amazon who are actively taking measures in order to ensure that women are represented at the top. So I think we can also learn from that and have more active mentoring programs within our organizations. And I think that would benefit us greatly. So with that, I would like to conclude the panel today. Thank you everyone for joining us. I hope you found the talk helpful. Thank you very much.